Thanks for tuning in to Watch the Ordinary Filmmaker. It's Wednesday, November the 10th, 2021, and it's a day of firmware updates. Nikon just released a slew of firmware updates for their cameras, the Z50, Z5, 6, 7, as well as for the 20 to 200 f2.8 lens in support of the Nikon Z9. But Panasonic also released a firmware update. They released a firmware update for the Panasonic GH5 Micro Four Thirds camera, the Mark II. Here's what's included in that firmware update. They added a new feature that allows you to stream 4K, but they also added several other functions. Live View Composite function has been added, and 720 and 1080 degrees added as focus ring control options. And you can also connect Lumix tether via wired LAN, and multiple cameras can be controlled from that Lumix tether. Now, zoom operation of the Lumix G Power Zoom lenses can be controlled from Lumix 3. They've also made some performance improvements. They fixed an issue where the camera froze when transferring images to a PC via Wi-Fi at 5 gigahertz. And of course, there's nothing worse than when your camera bricks up or just completely locks up during a shoot. And even I've had that problem with my Canon R5. I don't know what it is with the R5, but I guess somewhere around version 1.2 and 1.4, I had problems sometimes when I tried different media. I was doing tests. The first card I got with a Canon R5 was the Pro Grade Cobalt's 325 gig card. I used it for this channel for many, many months. Then all of a sudden, when I started recording, after 2 minutes, it would completely lock up the camera. Every time, 2 to 2.5 minutes, lock up the camera. I reached out to them. I did everything they suggested in terms of support, and I said, no, still happening. Sent it back, they analyzed it, they reported back and saying, look, we didn't have any problems with it, we didn't find any problems. They sent me a new card, and of course that card worked fine. So, a little bit later, I had a Pairgear CF Express card, a 512 gig I did a review on, fine in video mode. I recorded 8K RAW for 27 minutes, but when I went to shoot high-speed stills with a 100 millimeter macro f2.8, every now and then we just completely lock up. And I don't know what the problem is. I get a sense that it's the interpretation, Canon's interpretation of the CF Express specification, or how Canon deals with errors in reporting standard error out. I haven't had any problems with the Angelbird cards, but that doesn't mean it was a problem with the Cobalt card or a problem with the Pairgear card. I do get a sense that it's how Canon is interpreting the specification or reporting standard out. But the point I'm trying to get is I get bricking your camera. I get what it's like when you have a camera that's not responsive because you've applied a firmware update that creates problems. So if you don't need these enhancements, if you don't need these improvements right away, wait a week or two. Case in point, earlier this year, Canon released firmware update 1.3 for the R6, and they pulled it within 3 days. Why? Well, because it was bricking some cameras in certain modes. So it is possible that cameras or any company that releases a firmware update can not only improve your workflow and add capabilities or enhancements, but it can also make things worse. So please read the release notes. Wait a week or two, because if something major does happen, you're going to find out pretty quickly. The last thing you want to do is be the first out there to implement something, and now you've wasted a few days or a few hours trying to solve a problem that you could be better spent earning some money. One other thing too, please like and subscribe. I take it as a virtual pat on the back and a thank you, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just have to kind of reach over and click subscribe. If you don't want notifications of every video, then just don't click notification all, but it really, really does help this channel grow. One other thing I want to talk about in behind the scenes, I've taken a few notes here. It's related to using this MacBook Air with Final Cut Pro, and I talked to you guys many times about how wonderful it is. There's no sluggishness, no performance or anything like that. But I've noticed a change since the latest updates on Final Cut Pro as well as my Mac. And so because I've been telling you how good it works on an entry-level MacBook Air with a 7-core GPU, I feel it's necessary to come clean right now. Since Apple released the M1 Pro and M1 Max not too long ago, they updated Final Cut to 10.6 to take advantage of those processors. And if you don't, this will actually perform better at exporting and rendering than on one of those new machines. However, on this M1 MacBook Air, here's what I've noticed. After I first synchronize the audio that I record from the Tascam, and yes, it's still recording, with the video taken out of the Ninja, it seems to take several seconds to display the audio below the video. And then if I double click to go in to see the different audio channels, again, it takes time. And I didn't have that problem, issue, concern prior to upgrading to FCPX 10.6 or Final Cut Pro 10.6. But I also noticed a couple of other problems. I use plugins such as MotionVFX. I really like it. So when I do a lot of the graphic overlays along the sides or the bottom, that's what I'm using. And some really strange things would happen. Now, to make this work, I usually have a gradient, which is the blue background, then over top of that, I have the effects layer. And it only takes up about a fourth of the screen, which is usually right along this side here. And of course, you can see me on the rest of it. Now, what I see in Final Cut now is it will not show that transparent layer. I will just see the effect, and then I just see black where you should be seeing me. And there's a few ways to work around that. I just undo the paste again, and usually it works. But yesterday I felt like I was arguing it. I'd paste it several times and still it wouldn't work. And I thought, well, let's try something I used to do on Windows all the time. Restart Final Cut. So I shut it down, loaded it back up, and it worked. These are new concerns or issues that I've noticed since the upgrade to Final Cut 10.6. Have you guys noticed any of those issues at all? I just felt it was important to let you know that my experience with the MacBook Air up until 10.6 in the latest operating system update, and I'm not on Monterey yet, this thing was super fast and lickety-split. And in terms of editing now, it still is, but I'm finding there are some performance issues. Now, one last issue I want to talk about. This is something I've been experiencing for a couple of years now, and if you're not rendering your videos, it's not an issue. But because I'm using certain effects like MotionVFX and other effects, what I found is if I don't render out, do a render all, I have some anomalous behavior, and it's annoying. In one case, I deleted several clips from my video and went to do an export, but it wasn't deleted from the final product. Sometimes it will error out. So Apple support told me to do a render all. And even after I do a render all, and some of these projects I have are really huge projects, and I will create mini exports. And the thing with rendering is if you don't render, well, guess what? When you go to export, Final Cut's going to do a render for you, or Compressor's going to do it for you. When I do a render all, if I immediately then go ahead and close Final Cut and load it back up with the same project in the same location, from the same library, everything the same, it then has to spend time re-rendering again. Some projects like this, which are only a couple of minutes long, no big deal. But for my films that are an hour and 40 minutes long, that can mean another 5, 10, or 15 minutes to render every time I load up the project. Because the last thing I want to do when I do an export, which can take 50 minutes, or in this case, the 1 hour and 40 minute project, it takes an hour and 12 minutes. The last thing I want it to do is to error out, so I always have to do a render all. And this has really been a frustrating thing. Whenever I call up Apple, I tell them about it, they say, oh, you make sure you're doing ProRes. And yes, I'm using ProRes. I'm doing a render all, I'm doing everything they say, but I don't know what it is with the rendering. It seems to be a low priority issue. So do you render? Do you notice this same problem that I'm having? Let me know in the comment section down below, because I'd like to raise this up a little bit. Maybe, just maybe somebody from Apple is watching and they might take a look at this. But I get it. For my YouTube channel, a lot of the times, if I'm not using any overlays, I don't render at all. I just go to an export. I don't even use Apple ProRes. Well, actually I do because I'm using the Ninja. I never used to. Anyhow, so these are just some of the issues I've noticed when I'm working with Final Cut Pro 10.6, the latest version, on the latest version of the operating system that I'm running, not Monterey, with regard to, like I said, some display performance issues as well as rendering. Oh, one last thing too, please don't forget to subscribe. Your likes and subscribes really do help this channel grow. It doesn't cost you anything. I know you have to kind of reach over there and it's kind of annoying, but not only do I take it as a virtual pat on the back, but it really does help this channel grow. Now, did I just repeat that and say that earlier? I might have, but I've just recorded 2 videos, and sometimes I can't remember if I said it in a previous video or not. So please forgive me if I repeated it, but thank you so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.